I think if you want to be a musician, if you want to be any kind of an artist, Detroit or otherwise, is to find that thing that you really love doing, that you think you do better than most people, the thing that only you can do, and then just work at it. I think that, you know, if it's your true path, God's going to open doors that you wouldn't believe. Sometimes I have looked for instruments, and once I found them, I couldn't afford them. And then the next thing I knew, somebody built one and gave it to me. So I think, you know, trust God, first of all. Trust your art, trust your artistic vision, and, you know, if it's true, you'll do fine.
Keep practicing, just keep doing it.
Stay at it. Just stay at it.
And it doesn't matter what age you start at. You are not born being this fully formed talent. You have to work at it, and you have to decide at some point, this is what I'm going to do. And I've just mentioned to somebody that Vincent van Gogh didn't decide to be an artist until he was in his 30s, and he failed at everything else.
I think I was probably in my 40s before my hands actually did what my mind was telling it to do. You know, I mean, you have to stay at it. That's just it. If you love it, stay at it.
For people coming up, you know, and kind of getting into arts, and, you know, I guess I would just say, you know, get an education in the field that you love. You know, if it's painting, you know, study painting. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for, obviously, for, you know, your own creativity and things like that. But, you know, learn as much about it as you can, practice it, develop your craft. You know, go to college, go to art school. If that's too much of a commitment or something, or you're not sure, there's other places, like I said, like Y Arts or Detroit Film Center, where you can take a class, and it's just, you really need, I think a lot of people coming up in their art field, it's initially this big inspiration, and that's what you should have, and that's what should drive you. But then after that, you have to get the practical skills to be able to execute what you want and just know how to develop it. So I guess the main advice would just be to educate yourself in the art that you love, and just practice it and get your craft down.
Absolutely. I think Detroit doesn't get the credit for the fact that it's got wonderful artists, it's got wonderful filmmakers, it's got a lot of great things going for it. There are great actors here, there's a great improvisational program. I mean, one of the things that I do is I work with the Bowl branch at the YMCA downtown. There's a theater there, people do improv, people do acting, there are painters, there are poets, all kind of people. And it's really a pity, because a lot of times people don't open up the possibilities that come with doing art. If you look at a person on the camera, imagine how many people are behind the camera making that happen. How many people are coaching? How many people are writing? Who's operating the camera? Who's doing the editing? You know, same thing with music. You see a musician. Well, you know, who are the background musicians? Who are the dancers? Who are the coordinators? Who are the choreographers? You know, who's booking it? Who's the promoter? Who's the writers? You know, when you start to discover that and take art seriously, you start to realize that there are lots of careers in art that go way beyond the person on the camera or the person on the record that you're listening to.
It's a hard place. It's hard to make a living. It's hard to do anything here. There's not very much artwork going on here. Public art is really hard, so everybody's really cutthroat going after it.
It's like scrambling for crumbs.
Yeah, it really is.
Detroit, living and working in Detroit definitely affects, I guess, the look and the themes of my pieces. I mean, a couple of my films anyways are specifically about Detroit, you know, whether it's kind of a lot of the abandoned buildings and things like that, or like kind of more of a socioeconomic kind of slant to it. And I think just to me, like just the landscape and all the different cultures in Detroit, in the neighborhoods, it's kind of inspiring to me in its diversity, and I think that is reflected a lot in my films. It's just kind of like, I think Detroit provokes a different way of thinking to a lot of residents here and people that live here, as opposed to like people I know from other parts of the country or the world. Like, it's just kind of like, it's a unique vibe like in Detroit, and for me as a filmmaker, it definitely inspires me to a sense.
I've thought about this one on the way here, if I may.
Please.
In our neighborhood, we live in Detroit. In our neighborhood at one time, we had Romanians next door that were raising chickens. So we woke up to a rooster every day. We had a Laotian group down the street that had torn out their backyard and put in rice paddies. We had that same neighborhood. We just had everything in that same neighborhood. The guy raising the
There was
peacocks.
a guy that was associated with the zoo somehow, and he took breeding pairs of peacocks to his house. So you'd wake up in the morning to this caw of peacocks. You know, I mean, it's just
Everything.
everything is here. Everything, and everything you see. Back to the
Smell.
inspiration. You know, you never know where it's going to come from, so you just have to be aware of.
All the time. And I think artists are anyway. You're hearing, you're smelling, you're seeing everything all the time. And sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it impacts you too much. I think that's why artists tend to be more sensitive than other people. But it's all an equal level. And you have to filter it through in some way, and it'll come out in art. Oh, thank you.
The 12